was Constantinople, now it's Istanbul. Now Constantinople, been a long time gone. Constantinople, now it's Turkish delight on a moonlit night. Every gal in Constantinople lives in Istanbul. Now Constantinople, so if you believe in Constantinople, she'll be waiting in Istanbul.
Welcome back, young scholars. In this video, we will be discussing the Byzantine Empire. So the big questions you should be able to answer after watching this video are: first, in what ways did the Byzantine Empire continue the political traditions of the Roman Empire, and in what ways did they change them? Second, in what ways did the Byzantine empires continue the cultural traditions of the Roman Empire, and in what ways did they change them? And then third, what role did the Byzantines play in trans-regional trade? So in what ways did the Byzantine Empire continue the political traditions of the Roman Empire, and in what ways did they change them? So if you'll recall from the earlier video on the Roman Empire, in 285 the Roman Empire was split by the Emperor Diocletian between the Western Roman Empire, which included the city of Rome, and the Eastern Roman Empire. And if you'll recall, it was during this period in the 300s and into the 400s that the Eastern Roman Empire was growing increasingly wealthy, whereas the Western Roman Empire was beginning to disintegrate and collapse. Now eventually the Eastern Roman Empire would become the Byzantine Empire. It would be renamed essentially by historians as the Byzantine Empire. Now if you recall, in 330 CE, Constantine moves the capital of the Roman Empire to the Greek city of Byzantium. He is going to rename that city Constantinople after himself. Now eventually that city, once it's conquered, it will be renamed Istanbul, so it's conquered by these Muslim Turks. And so today Istanbul is part of the modern day country of Turkey. So Germanic tribes are going to come in and conquer the Western Roman Empire, including the Goths, the Vandals, the Franks. They're going to establish kingdoms throughout Western Europe, but it's going to be relatively decentralized, whereas the Byzantines are going to continue that centralized imperial rule for another 1,000 years. So we already can identify some changes. One, they move the capital from Rome to Constantinople, and here we can make a claim about continuation, with a continuation of centralized imperial power in the Byzantine Empire. If we look at this image, just trying to take a guess at who some of these figures might be. Right in the center here, wearing purple, the color of royalty, we have the Emperor Justinian. Now we look to the left and we see some soldiers. We can even see the Chi Rho symbol, which was first adopted by Constantine on their shields as a symbol of the Romans' conversion to Christianity. So the military is at the emperor's back and supporting the emperor. We also have some clergy, some people of the book here. We can see a copy of the Bible. And we have some other folks wearing a little bit of purple, so those would be the imperial court, the officials for the Byzantine Empire. And when we're talking about the Byzantine Empire, another major continuity is that the emperor was extremely powerful and a centralized ruler. So in the same way that the Caesars in the Roman Empire were powerful centralized rulers, lots of control over the economy. And one of the unique aspects of the Byzantine Empire was that the church and the state, in some respects, were relatively combined. It's a term known as Caesaropapism. So the emperor had control over both the church and the state. And the way in which the emperor controlled the church was through the appointing of the patriarch. So later we'll talk about how the Eastern Orthodox branch of Christianity is going to form in the Byzantine Empire, and so it's going to be this emperor who's going to have control over the church and appoint the patriarch. Now this is very different than what's happening in Western Europe, where the Pope has lots of power. The Pope is even going so far and occasionally appointing and picking the rulers, as we'll find out in a later video. And so we see some differences between what was going on in the Byzantine Empire and what was going on in Western Europe during this time period. And this is actually a lot more similar to what we see in the Islamic world, right? Where the church and state are sort of fused in one role, the caliph. Well, here we have the Caesar, the emperor of the Byzantine Empire, having lots of power and control over the church and appointing that patriarch. One of the most famous Byzantine emperors is Justinian, so he was going to really rule at the height of the empire between 527 and 565 CE. So notice, this is very shortly after the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, is really when the Byzantines are at their peak or their height. And he is going to be responsible for recapturing parts of the old Western Roman Empire. So this is what the Byzantine Empire looked like in 476 when he gained the throne. Notice he has expanded the Byzantine Empire into portions of the old Western Roman Empire, retook the Italian peninsula, including the city of Rome and parts of North Africa. So he was an excellent military ruler. However, it's not going to last. And so we will see the slow disintegration of the Byzantine Empire after Justinian's death. So the second thing Justinian did was he built this massive church called the Hagia Sophia. It becomes the center of the Eastern Orthodox Church. Here you can see the Hagia Sophia still exists today. It was the largest cathedral in the world for 1,000 years. That's how large and grand and impressive this was. Now it looks very different today because after the collapse of the Byzantine Empire, Muslims are going to take this region and they are going to build some minarets, which are used to issue the call to prayer. So someone goes up into these minarets and shouts the call to prayer 5 times a day. So he builds this Hagia Sophia. It's later this massive church. It's later converted into a mosque, and actually today it's a beautiful museum in modern day Istanbul. So you can get a sense of just the sheer size and grandeur of this building, still standing nearly 1,500 years after its initial construction. And you can see both the Christian iconography, this beautiful Madonna image here, right next to these discs that say Allah and Muhammad in Arabic. So one of the things he also was involved in the construction of was the walls of Constantinople, which are going to be very important. Constantinople is going to constantly be under siege, and so he's going to build these massive walls around the city. And these walls actually were relatively successful in contrast to the Great Wall of China. It's always fascinating that nowadays talking about walls in world history and those that have worked in keeping people out and those that have failed. In terms of ones that have been relatively successful, I think this is one that you would want to point to, the walls of the city of Constantinople, which are going to hold out foreign invasions for 1,000 years. So the third thing that Justinian did was that he had various legal scholars within the Byzantine Empire collect Roman law and simplify it, make it more fair, make it more equitable. Remember, Roman law started with the 12 tables, but over time it had grown larger and larger, and so he is going to take that codified law and make it more fair and straightforward and simple, and this is known as Justinian's Code. He's considered one of the great lawgivers in history, much like Hammurabi. So he is going to marry Theodora. Now Theodora was not born into a high class in Byzantine society. She was an actress when she caught the eye of Justinian, but behind every great man there's oftentimes a great woman, and Theodora certainly qualifies, as I'll explain in a second. So he's going to survive the Nika peasant riots. In the middle of Constantinople, there is what's known as the Hippodrome, this large stadium for chariot racing. And there were 2 major teams in Constantinople, the Greens and the Blues. It's kind of like if the Democrats and the Republicans each had sporting teams and they competed against one another. So they were not only sports rivals, they're also sort of political rivals as well. 5 years into Justinian's rule, they became upset with something that Justinian was doing, and so there was this massive peasant uprising, this protest. And Justinian is, a young emperor at the time, and he's just like, let's get out of here. This is not going to end well for us. And lo and behold, who decides to speak up at this point? Theodora. So Theodora essentially says, be a man. She says, I look really good in purple, the color of royalty. I'm not going to, go into exile. And so Theodora is going to convince Justinian to stay and fight. It ends up that the emperor's army is going to end up killing about 30,000 of these rebels and suppressing the rebellion ultimately. Now, the last thing Justinian did, or his major accomplishments, is he's going to survive the plague that's named after him. So there's a wave of plague known as Justinian's plague. that he is going to ultimately survive, but it's going to lead to the death of about 40% of the people of Constantinople. So a massive wave of the plague in the mid 500s. After Justinian's death, the empire is going to slowly contract. So we can see it at its maximum extent under Justinian, and then notice 867, 1025, they regain some territory, 1095. Really though, when we're thinking about the Byzantine Empire, we're thinking about this: Anatolia, which is modern day Turkey, and most of the Balkan Peninsula right here. So 1270. By 1400, this is really all that was left, the walls of the city of Constantinople. So after Justinian's death, the empire slowly declines in power due to external threats. Now, who was threatening the Byzantines? Some of these we've studied already. First, we had the Sassanids, the Persians, who were the constant rivals of the Byzantines. And so there was fighting between the Persian Sassanids and the Byzantines. There was also the Germanic tribes, some of which were coming down from Central Europe, Asia, moving down into this region. During the Fourth Crusade, instead of going to the Holy Land to recapture the Holy Land like they were supposed to, these Catholic crusaders are going to invade Constantinople and lay siege really to the city of Constantinople, and they end up taking some prizes back with them. These are the horses of St. Mark, which are in the city of Venice today. They at one time adorned the top of the Hippodrome. So this rivalry within the Christian community between Catholics and Eastern Orthodox is going to lead to some fighting during the Fourth Crusade. And then finally, it's the Ottoman Turks who are going to conquer and put the death nail in the Byzantine Empire. They are an Islamic group who are going to conquer the city of Constantinople in 1453, so a really important critical date in this class, and an important turning point event was the conquest of the city of Constantinople by the Islamic Ottoman Turks. They are going to have, notice the technology that they have that allows them to be successful, these massive cannons, gunpowder, right, which are going to allow them to breach the walls of Constantinople and conquer the city in 1453. So we're going to pause it there, and then we'll pick up with the next two big questions in the next video. But after watching this video, you should be able to answer this first big question: in what ways did the Byzantine Empire continue the political traditions of the Roman Empire, and in what ways did they change them? Thanks for watching.